The chandeliers dripped golden light across the ballroom like melted honey, each sparkle reflecting a version of happiness that didn't quite exist. Laughter floated through the air, loud, polite, and painfully rehearsed. My father's 50th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, but standing there, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just another performance in a long, running play about a family that had never really loved each other. My father, Daniel, looked every bit the charming host. His tuxedo was crisp, his smile steady, his hand comfortably resting on the back of his new wife, Vanessa. She was beautiful, too beautiful, in the kind of way that made people whisper about her age and his wallet. Yet when she looked at him, there was something genuine in her eyes, something soft. I almost envied that. Across the room sat my mother, Martha, always perfect, always composed. Her posture screamed control, her diamond earrings caught every flicker of light, and her red lipstick looked sharp enough to draw blood. She and my father hadn't been in the same room for almost 2 years. Since the divorce, but tonight she was here, playing her role for the sake of appearances. My mother didn't believe in breaking image. She believed in breaking people instead. I stood near the edge of the room, pretending to sip champagne, watching the swirl of guests move like a glittering tide. Everyone was talking, laughing, toasting. No one seemed to notice how stiff my father's shoulders were whenever my mother's laughter cut through the air. No one saw how her eyes followed him, sharp and cold, as if every glance was a reminder of what she'd lost, or what she still wanted to own. Leela, Vanessa's voice broke through my thoughts. She approached with her usual warmth, genuine and almost disarming. "I'm so glad you came. Your dad's been looking for you." I managed a polite smile. "Yeah, well, it's his big day. I wouldn't miss it." She touched my arm lightly. "He'll be happy you're here. It means a lot." I wanted to believe her. But as my gaze drifted back toward my mother, who was now chatting with a group of business associates, I could feel the tension pulling tight between us like invisible wire. My mother didn't look my way, but she didn't need to. I knew what she thought, that I shouldn't be here, not at this party, not beside my father's new wife. In her mind, I was supposed to choose a side, and she'd never forgiven me for not choosing hers. The music swelled. Waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays, the air thick with perfume and expectation. My father raised his glass to give a toast, his voice calm, his words rehearsed. People cheered, Vanessa beamed, and my mother's lips pressed into the faintest, most poisonous smile. I looked around at the faces glowing under the chandelier's family friends, business partners, strangers. They all looked so comfortable, so sure of where they belonged, and then there was me, caught in the middle of two worlds belonging to neither. That night, I told myself I'd survive a few hours, offer a polite smile, and leave quietly before midnight. I had no idea that before the evening ended, my mother would say something that would split our family open like glass, and nothing, not even the lies we'd built our lives on, would ever look perfect again. Dinner began with the clinking of silverware and the kind of laughter that only happens when people are pretending to be happy. The long table gleamed under crystal lights, covered in too many flowers and not enough honesty. I sat between two of my father's colleagues, nodding politely at conversations about stock markets and summer homes, all while my stomach twisted tighter with every glance across the table. My father sat at the head, looking proud and weary all at once. Vanessa, radiant as ever, stayed close to him, her hand occasionally brushing his. And then there was my mother, seated directly opposite, her smile brittle and her wine glass never empty for long. She'd insisted on attending for appearances, but I could tell she was here to prove something. To him, to Vanessa, maybe even to me. Every time Vanessa spoke, my mother's jaw tensed just slightly, her eyes narrowing with that familiar mixture of superiority and envy. I'd seen that look all my life. It was the one she wore when she thought she was losing control. When dessert was served, Vanessa rose from her chair, tapping her glass lightly. "If I could have everyone's attention," she said, her voice sweet but steady. "I just wanted to say a few words for Daniel's birthday." The room quieted. Cameras lifted. My father smiled, modest and proud. Vanessa continued, "Daniel, you've built an incredible life. A career, a home, and most importantly, a family." She glanced around the table, her eyes landing briefly on me. We're so lucky to share this day with the people who matter most. It was a simple sentiment. Harmless even, but it was like tossing a match into gasoline. My mother's laugh cut through the room, soft but sharp enough to slice. Family, she repeated, swirling the wine in her glass. That's an interesting choice of word. Vanessa blinked, unsure whether to respond. My father frowned. I felt the pulse in my throat quicken. My mother leaned back in her chair, her eyes glittering under the lights. You talk about family as if you actually know what it means, she said, her tone dripping with sweetness. But tell me, Vanessa, when half the people at this table barely belong, is it still a family or just a collection of guests? The room went still. I felt the heat rise to my face. She didn't look at me directly, but everyone knew who she meant. Mom, I whispered, my voice trembling. Don't, she turned to me then, eyes gleaming with something cruel and triumphant. Oh, come now, Leela, she said too loudly. Don't act surprised, you're not even family anymore. It was as if the words themselves had teeth. The room fell completely silent, no music, no chatter, just the sound of my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. Someone's fork clinked against a plate and stopped. My father's face went white. Mom, I breathed, my voice breaking. Why would you say that? She shrugged, her lips curving into a brittle smile. It's just the truth, darling, don't make a scene. But the scene had already been made. I felt every eye on me, pitying, curious, judging as I pushed back my chair. The scrape of the metal legs against the marble floor echoed like thunder. My father opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. Without another word, I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the floor like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Outside, the laughter and music faded into a muffled hum behind the glass doors. The night air hit my skin, cold and sharp, and only then did I realize I was shaking. My mother's words echoed in my head over and over again. You're not even family anymore. And for the first time in my life, I believed her. The night air wrapped around me like a shiver I couldn't shake. I stood at the edge of the garden, the soft hum of music fading behind the tall glass doors. Fairy lights hung from the trees, flickering like dying stars. For a moment, I just stared at my reflection in the pond. My face pale, my mascara smudged, my eyes hollow. You're not even family anymore. The words replayed in my head, each echo cutting a little deeper. My mother had humiliated me before, but this was different. It wasn't just anger, it was rejection. It was her way of erasing me, as if I were some stain she could scrub out of her perfect image. I wanted to go home, but where was home anymore? My father's house wasn't mine, and my mother's words had just made it clear I didn't belong in hers either. Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind me. Leela, Vanessa's voice was soft, careful. I turned, quickly wiping my face. I'm fine, I lied. She hesitated before sitting down beside me on the bench. Her perfume smelled faintly of vanilla and something warmer, comforting in a way that surprised me. I don't think you're fine, she said quietly, and honestly, after what she said, I wouldn't be either. I forced a laugh, bitter and small. She's always like that, cold, controlling, but I never thought she'd say it out loud. Vanessa sighed, her eyes full of sympathy. She shouldn't have. There's no excuse for what she did. For a while we just sat there, the only sound the rustle of leaves and distant laughter from the party. I watched the reflections on the pond tremble as a breeze passed, blurring everything. It felt right. Like even the water couldn't hold its shape tonight. Then Vanessa said something that made my stomach twist. She's carried that guilt for a long time, you know. I turned to her, frowning. Guilt, for what? She bit her lip, instantly realizing she'd said too much. Forget I said that. She murmured. No, I said sharply. What guilt? What do you mean? Vanessa looked torn, her hands trembling slightly. It's not my place. Your father should be the one to tell you. My pulse quickened. Tell me what? She hesitated for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. That you're not Daniel's biological daughter. The world stopped. What? I said, blinking, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a cruel joke. But she didn't. Her eyes stayed on mine, soft, sincere, apologetic. Your mother had an affair a long time ago. Vanessa continued gently. Your father found out when you were little, but he chose to stay. He didn't want to lose you. He loved you too much. I stared at her, my breath catching. The pieces of my life, the things that never made sense, fell into place like shards of broken glass. My mother's coldness, her constant bitterness, her cutting words, it wasn't disappointment, it was guilt. She's hated me all this time. I whispered, not because of who I am, but because of what I remind her of. Vanessa nodded slowly. I think she's hated herself most of all. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe. My entire life had just shifted in an instant. The man who raised me wasn't my father. The woman who gave me life couldn't love me. And suddenly, that one sentence at dinner, "You're not even family," felt more like a confession than an insult. I looked toward the glowing windows of the house, where laughter still drifted from inside. My voice came out steady, colder than I felt. She wanted to destroy me in front of everyone. Vanessa looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I stood, my tears finally dry. I'm going to destroy her illusion instead. I walked back into the ballroom as if I belonged there all along. The glittering lights, the clinking glasses, the rehearsed laughter, it all blurred into background noise. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of my mother, not of the whispers, not of the judgmental eyes staring at me. Tonight I had a new purpose. My heels clicked against the marble floor, sharp and deliberate, each step echoing like a heartbeat. Conversations faltered as I passed. Guests glanced at one another, sensing the shift in the room, sensing that something was about to happen. My mother's gaze snapped to me, her smile rigid, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her polished mask. I paused in the center of the room, the kind of calm stillness that precedes a storm. My father looked up from his chair, his eyes wide and conflicted. Vanessa stood beside him, her hand on his arm, her expression a mixture of worry and anticipation. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch. Then I spoke, my voice steady, clear, and low enough to draw every ear. You're right, Mom. The words landed like a stone in the quiet room. Heads turned, murmurs spreading like wildfire. You said I'm not family, and you're right. I let my gaze sweep across the crowd, then locked eyes with her. Not by blood, at least, but there's something you've never understood about me. Something you've never been able to control, loyalty. The room held its collective breath. My mother's lips twitched, anger simmering beneath the surface, but she said nothing. I've spent my whole life trying to be the daughter you could love, the person you could be proud of. I continued, my voice rising just enough to carry, and I've realized something. Loyalty isn't about blood. It's about truth, and unlike you, I never ran from it. I paused, letting my words sink. I could see the shock ripple across the guests' faces, some confused, some gleeful, some horrified. And tonight, I said softly, almost tenderly, I want everyone here to know the truth you've tried so hard to hide, Mom, about why you and Dad really divorced, about the choices you made when you thought no one would ever find out. Gasps spread through the room like a wave. My father covered his face, shaking his head. My mother froze, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it could anchor her. You wanted to erase the past, I said, turning fully to face her, my eyes unflinching. You wanted to pretend it never happened, but the truth always finds a way, and now so do I. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it, powerless for once. The polished mask of perfection cracked, revealing the fragile, bitter woman beneath. I took one final step back, my chest light, my heart steady. I may not share his blood, I said, nodding to my father, but I share something stronger: honesty, courage, and the ability to walk away when you can't face the consequences of your own lies. I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked toward the garden, past the shocked faces and the murmurs of the crowd. Each step felt like freedom, each breath like reclaiming myself. Outside, the night was calm. The air smelled faintly of blossoms and distant rain. I stopped at the stone bench, my heart finally stilling. Behind me, the chaos of the party continued, but it was no longer mine. I was free, not because I was family, not because I had blood ties, but because I had finally taken control of my story. And in that quiet, victorious moment, I realized something beautiful. Revenge doesn't have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes truth itself is the sweetest form of justice. I smiled, finally, and let the night swallow my past.